I'm going to show you how to use the integrated worksheet in Total to help provide better support and analysis for your appraisal. So in our Total setup, I have developed a comment section where we kind of work from the premise that even if I'm not making an adjustment, I need to support the fact that no adjustment has been made. And so we've set up a template that basically goes through and identifies each of the elements within the appraisal that we have adjusted for, and then provide comments and analysis to support either why we made the adjustment or why we didn't, along with a reconciliation down at the bottom. So there's sections within the appraisal where I need to go in and determine what my adjustments ought to be. And so one of the first things that a lot of times we as appraisers have problems with is figuring out what our adjustments ought to be for land. And so what I'm going to do is we've gone in and have taken out of the market the average sales price of the comparable sales that were used, and we've come up with a site ratio. Now in our analysis we had determined the site value is about $27,000, and it's a 9,000 square foot lot. So when I do that, I can now come in, and the average sales price for that lot's about just over $3 a square foot. If I now determine that the additional value of that ground is somewhere between 15 and 20%, that's telling me that my adjustment should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 46 to maybe 60 cents a square foot. I can now come into my adjustment matrix, and I like to use the expanded detailed view. We'll go to the Smart Adjust and set up my adjustment profile. So in this case, I have now determined that I probably want to adjust for size if there's more than 1,000 square feet in lot size. If I'm using 15%, which in this case I think is probably reasonable, I'm going to round it to 45 cents a square foot. And what you will see is that if there is more than a 1,000 square foot difference in the comparable sales, that the adjustment will then be applied, and you can see how that happens. And it gives me some basis for supporting what that adjustment ought to be. Likewise, as I get into trying to determine the adjustments that I ought to be making for above grade living space, in this case what this has done is it's told me that based on all of my comparable sales, the average sales price is $63 per square foot. Now we've gone and done some analysis that suggests that the marginal size adjustments is about 35% of the price per square foot. Now you'll have to go do your own analysis to determine what that is, but this is using what is often referred to as the Rotterman method, where you look at the variable cost associated, and this will change based on the ratio of land to building and a few other factors, but you can go and determine through analysis what that ought to be. In this case, we have determined in this market area 35% is pretty reasonable. And so now I can go say, well, it's suggesting about a $57 per square foot adjustment would be reasonably well supported. So again, I come back to my side-by-side view. I come back to my Smart Adjust. In this case, I have put in, rounded it to $55 a square foot if there's more than 50 square feet, and it will apply the adjustment. We've likewise developed some analysis that suggests that typical depreciation for age, effective age, is about a half a percent a year. We actually, by the time you take out your lot, your landscaping, your things other than living space, that works out to be about 1% a year, and that will vary based on the property type. But now one of the really nice things is I can say I want to adjust my comparable sales at 0.5% per year, and you will see now that as I go and look at my comparable sales, it's applied that adjustment. I can also apply an additional adjustment if I think I need to reflect differences in condition. In this case, I've got a 12-year-old home and there's been very little improvement, so another 1% adjustment was applied for condition to support that difference. We generally look at our quality adjustments based on Marshall Swift, and we'll adjust those based on a per square foot basis, which then is applied, and gives us the support that we need to be able to defend what the adjustment is. So now as I come back and look at my my cost data, I'll then come into my addendum and say, okay, the average price was $163, and I applied that at about $55 per square foot. Now, where this becomes particularly useful, and something that I really like, is that I have now come in and extracted all of this data from my data that I provided, and it's telling me that my unadjusted sales showed a low of 189.9, a high of 275, a mean of 221, and a median of 207. After I've adjusted the sales, I've got a 202, a high of 241, a mean of 216.5, and a median of 210.450. Interesting, this property is selling for 209.5. So what this has done is it's telling me I've got a $35,000 or $39,000 range, which is about 16%. But after and two of these properties are listings, they've been adjusted, but they tend to be a little higher. So now I come in and see that my range was reduced by about 47%. So that makes me feel better to see that after I've made my adjustments, it's tightened the range up. I'm in a rural area with limited data, so you tend to have less comparable data, which tends to result in a little wider range. We've now gone in and taken all of the data out of our form that we've linked to, and it's giving me my net and gross adjustment table, which I really like. And what that allows me to do is to analyze and decide if I need to provide additional comments. It also gives me my price per square foot before and after. Finally, what I have is an adjustment table along with an awaited range that I can go in and weight my comparable sales if I want to do that. But what it's doing is just gives me a little table that tells me how close the comparable sales are, summary of the dates, my net and gross adjustments, and the sizes. I can now come in and weight this, and it will help me to then determine what that number ought to be based on these adjusted sales. So how I apply this is I come in and copy this data out of the worksheet, paste it into the table. I have to do a little bit of formatting here because it doesn't format those well as I would like it to, but I can copy this material from the worksheet, paste it in, and do the same thing here on my summary table. And now this becomes part of my reconciliation in supporting my final opinion of value. And as you can see, that the property is now easily reconciled, and I'll add some comments to explain what my final opinion of value was, and that it was near the center of the indicated range as reflected by the adjusted sales. So this is just another way that you can use the total worksheet as a tool to assist you in supporting some of the adjustments. Now the beauty with this is you can extract all kinds of data and use it in various ways to support the adjustments that you're making in a pretty easy way without having to go buy additional software. I hope that's helpful. Stay tuned and we'll provide you with some additional content on how to use some of the existing tools in becoming more effective in completing your appraisal.